Thank you, and hello, everybody. I see we have 93 participants, which is excellent. And we are starting the panel session on automated lexicography. We have 5 papers here, or 5 presentations. And as you know already, we will start with very short, let's say, summaries of what's what the work is about. Then a longer session will be followed where we will just discuss a bit between ourselves, so the authors of the papers and myself. And then we will open floor also for others to comment or ask questions and or anything else you want to talk about. So I will ask first Theresa.
Yes.
Yeah, you are here to start with the short presentation of your paper.
Yeah, so thank you for having me, and I'm delighted to present our work like what I'm doing with my supervisor Ulrich Heid at the University of Hildesheim. We are developing an electronic dictionary for the mathematical field of graph theory. And the particular point we are presenting in our paper here is our work on term extraction, because our working hypothesis is that we can highly automatically create an electronic dictionary for mathematics, as its language is really structured and has a really strict definitions, unlike maybe in other fields. And our term extraction was first based on 2 stages. So we had expert raters evaluating the extracted terms. I will give you in a minute some details on how we extracted the terms. And we found a really low Fleiss kappa of 0.35. So we initiated a discussion among them and found some qualitative issues which led to different classifications, because the raters were acquainted with the topic of designing a dictionary and had the simple question, should there be an entry for this lemma in the dictionary? And so we had 3 methods we used for the extraction, and gave the annotators or the raters a combined list. We call them P, T, and mesh method and U-list in our paper. So maybe you can go to the second slide for that, Simon, where you would be able to see the precision and recall, which was calculated based on this rater expert rating. So for the P method, we simply use definition patterns along with our hypothesis that we do not need frequency measured in a highly structured language like mathematics. And the T method was a traditional term extraction method combined with with frequencies. And we further did comparison with the so-called U-list, which is a list of the terms not being in the general language lexicon of the tagging tool TreeTagger. And in our paper, you can find some further comparison with a sketch engine and also a qualitative analysis of the results extracted. So yeah, I'm looking forward to the discussion, and thank you.
Thank you. And now we just continue with the next one. Maya Dominguez.
I'm here. Hello to
all
everybody.
Right. Hello. Hi.
Hello to
Good
everybody.
To see you. Good to see you.
I'm Marek Dominguez, and my colleagues Dorielle Bardanca and Alberto Simões are also in the virtual room. Our contribution presents Combinatoria, a tool for the semi-automatic generation of argumental balancing patterns in Spanish, French, and German. We will also talk about the current developments of our tools for analyzing and discarding the noun balancing. So far, the 3 simulators, Shera, SheraWord, and Combinatoria, have been designed for a wide set of languages. Our latest generator, CombiContext, is currently in progress, and it focuses on the phrasal and sentence of the context of the nominal phrase. The main goal is to create a multilingual platform for describing and consulting the balancing of different word cases. All simulators combine different linguistic theories, such as valency grammar, prototype theory, and so on. And they also implement NLP techniques, WordNet and WordNet-like lexical databases and other human-made multilingual resource for automatically generating lexicographic content. Internal and external tools are used for designing the prototypes. For the analysis of argument patterns, we retrieve data from Sketch Engine and from the multilingual dictionary Porlex, as well as from other balanced dictionaries. For compiling, expanding, and translating lexical data, we resort to WordNet and have developed the tools Lematiza, Combina, and TraduWord, an open source based translator. And to format the data feed to the generator, we have developed lexical package and the multilingual inflector Flexiona, which is based on Prelin. And of course, we have designed the generator itself. These tags often include some levels of human intervention. Combinatoria shows a new concept of electronic multilingual dictionaries, an automatic and more interactive balanced dictionary. It also proposes a conceptual onomasiological access to the argument patterns of the nominal phrase and provides a list of random examples for the selected information before. Currently, we are working on a sentence generator that combines the data used for combinatoria and data from Wikipedia extracted with a post-tagger. We believe that the prototype combinatoria, as well as the other tools, are valuable resources for language learning. Therefore, the simulators are developed as independent lexicographic tools for humans, but may also be integrated into other dictionaries to produce query-dependent dynamic examples. And finally, the prototypes may be even exported as computational lexicons. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Majo. Now we go to Anna. I can see you, but I can't hear you.
Hello, I'm here.
Oh, hi. Hello, Anna. Can you just say a few words about your...
Yes, thank you. So I'm Anna Frankenberg from the University of Surrey, and my paper is about taking a broad view of post-editing lexicography. And in the paper, I argue that post-editing can take two directions. You can post-edit material that has been automatically extracted on the left of the slide, and which is, I think, the main theme of many of the papers in this conference. And on, and on the right, you have here also material that has been already published. So let's look at the column on the left first. So you need to post-edit material that has been automatically extracted to be able to interpret, summarize language that has been gleaned from corpora. And this has already been discussed by as early as 1998 by Gregory Greffenstetter, for example, and also by Michael Rundell on the limits of human automation. But you also need post-editing to correct slips that occur in automatic lexicography, and very importantly, to adapt the results of automatic lexicography to the end user of the lexical tool. So here in this presentation, in this panel, for example, Dorielle was talking about adapting their interface to the dictionary editors, in this case, the end user. And in my presentation, I didn't have access to Dorielle's paper, for example, but I give examples from my own experience of post-editing corpora, like the corpus used in the creation of the Oxford Portuguese Dictionary. I talk about post-editing word lists, like the note selection for the Collocate text editor or writing assistant. I talk also about post-editing collocations and examples. Now moving on to the bit on the right of the slide, if dictionaries are to remain relevant, they need to be post-edited after they have been published. to be updated and relevant. And this is driven by changes in technology, like with the advent of corpora, with the advent of e-dictionaries, and with the advent of online real-time lookups. There are lots of things that you need to change in published dictionaries to keep up to date. It's also driven by changes in language, where you create new words, new senses, new collocations, and also by changes in society, because society looks at existing words differently. So I give examples of new headwords. For example, there are many in the new edition of the Oxford English Dictionary. For example, COVID, new senses, like things like elbow bump now has a completely new sense of greeting. I give examples also from the Oxford Monolingual Portuguese Dictionary, which is the one used behind Google One Box. And you have here new labels that need to be added to show that this is now considered offensive. And also how you need to modify definitions, examples, and so on. For example, marriage, you can't have a legal connection between man and woman. It now has to be between two persons because of same-sex marriage. So I give lots of examples in my presentation. And I conclude by saying that there are different levels of post-editing, and that I argue that you need more post-editing if the end user is a lay user, and you need less post-editing for expert users at the end, because expert users have a certain amount of e-lexicography literacy, and they can live with the little glitches of automatically extracted content or imperfect content. And then as many people in the talks I have listened to already, developers and editors need to work together to facilitate post-editing. And I think this is already happening. I mean, we give a suggestion to Sketch Engine and they look at it and they implement it. And there are lots of teams working together to facilitate post-editing and improve the end product. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Anna. And now we move to the next one, which is the Sketch Engine team. Miloš, you will be the presenter, or?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so, hello, good morning, perhaps good afternoon already. Again, so the contribution we have is about a particular dictionary project, actually 3 projects where 3 dictionaries were created with Tagalog, Urdu, and Lao as source languages, and English and Korean as target languages. The dictionaries were created entirely from scratch by generating an automatic draft using various tools that I'll be talking about later and that I'll describe in the paper, and then post-editing the draft to obtain the final result. Altogether, each of the dictionaries has 50,000 headwords, out of which 15,000 were post-edited and 35,000 were left as they are. The customer for which we were doing this job was the Korean company Naver, which is kind of a Korean Google, so a company with a broad range of online services. That also explains why the target language is besides English also Korean. Can you move to the next slide, please? Thank you very much. Just a very quick overview of the entry structure, where you will not find anything surprising. All the steps except for the audio pronunciation were first automatically drafted and then post-edited. For the audio pronunciation, that quite didn't make sense because you can hardly post-edit the audio. So we had just people recording. And the last slide, if I may ask you, So what does the recipe for that look like? On the example of Tagalog, we've started with a well, big, say moderately big, modest web corpus. We've downloaded 650 million tokens after the standard cleaning, out of which we had to remove 2/3, over 400 million words, because for Tagalog and generally for many low resource languages, a lot of the material that you can find online is unfortunately machine translated, which we of course didn't want to have in the corpus. So at the end of the day, we were left with some 230 million words for Tagalog, about the same sizes for the other two languages, Urdu and Lao. We have used and improved the part of speech tagger. We have created our own lematizer by adopting some freely available morphological data. We have written a sketch grammar, loaded the corpus into sketch engine, and then we basically use sketch engine and Lexonomy for the whole workflow, which consisted of generating data from sketch engine, possibly also from other tools, and then having dedicated tasks, dedicated user interfaces in Lexonomy for the individual post-editing steps. So the editors were always working just on a single part of the entry. The entries, such as they were post-editing the lemmatization, reassigning lemmas to inflectional forms, or they were post-editing the thesaurus, where they were splitting the words into synonyms, antonyms, and possibly removing any wrong ones. And that's it. So perhaps just to follow on what Philip Lowe said early in the morning, you need a lot of IT guys for that. On one hand, yes, and because this was the first language that we have started with out of the three, there was quite some significant development carried out in the beginning, and I think at some point, perhaps for 1 or 2 months, there were up to 8 people involved. But I also think that that's something that you need to do once, and then a lot of the stuff that you create can be really reused. So we've started with Tagalog, and then with 3 months shift, we have then 3 months later started with Urdu, and 3 months later with Lao, and we were able to be quite faster and quite cheaper with every other language, with every next language. So so from that perspective, I'd hope that the issue that Phil was mentioning, that IT guys might be just much more expensive in some countries than Lexicographers, would not be such a big one eventually. Perhaps it is now, but I think as this becomes say more standard practice and the tools will be more available, then hopefully there will be again much more work for Lexicographers than for editors. But as you can see in our case, still this was, and definitely in terms of the amount of time spent, so number of hours, it was a major job for Lexicographers and a minor job for any IT guys. That's it. Thank you for attention.
Thanks, Miloš. And now we move to the last one. I think that Dorielle will be the presenter. Yes.
Yes, thank you, Simon. So this is a paper that I worked on together with my colleagues Raya, Vova, Mayan, and Ilan, who are present here as well. And I will just go through what we did. So the paper is an overview of a multi-layer project with the objective of developing over 200 new language pairs based on existing resources. The resources are the password semi-bilingual resource of K-dictionaries, which consists of an English core and translations to nearly 50 languages. The second resource that we relied on is the Global series, which is a collection of cores in nearly 25 European and Asian languages with rich syntactic and semantic information, which we used later to supplement our resource. So the paper is basically a description of the process. So it goes through the entire compilation process, but it's starting with the initial compilation from password. which is basically the reversing the password dictionary, taking the L2 layer and turning it into a newfound L1 layer. But the focus is the post-editing phase, focusing on the combination of the automated processes that we employed together with manual curation and revision. So the initial phase that I just described, we took the password dictionary, reversed it. We also detailed the development of a KIA tool, a K-index editorial tool, which was used by project managers and editors to basically do the initial compilation of the multi-classes, taking the existing information from password, specifically the L2 layer, and turning it into newfound multi-classes for each language. And the following phase was doing the post-editing on what was created in that method, basically normalizing headwords in terms of shifting the focus from what was previously a target language and now making it into a source language. So that also means taking into consideration dialectical variations or things that are specific to the language. Also normalizing part of speech categories to have a uniform part of speech schema for each resource. And especially also focusing on the grammatical information, which was not prevalent in the English resource for the reason that English is not a grammatical inflected language, gender inflected, sorry. So that was also a big component in that section. And then the following step was the full resource conversion, which was done after the initial compilation and the following post-editing phase, which consisted of matching the newfound glosses with the corresponding language in the global series, matching by headword and part of speech category, and using that information to supplement with the syntactic and semantic information which existed in the global series to further enrich the resource that was created in this process, ending up with over 200 pairs of newly created language pairs, which was not something that we had before, and we were able to develop based on dictionaries that we had previously, taking the information from L2 layer. So that's a rundown.
Okay, thanks a lot. Thanks, Dorielle. Now I will stop sharing so that we can see each other, and I'll just make a quick round with some specific questions for presenters that, well, let's say that came to my mind when I watched the presentations, and I would like to start with Theresa. So one thing that kind of was interesting in your presentation was about the annotators agreement. So there was not much agreement between them, right? And I would like to ask, I mean, this is a very, very common procedure in NLP or computational linguistics. So you ask 3 people and you see what the agreement is, and then you think you know something. So how important is it, you think, that what you present to annotators, that in the end they really agree on or can agree on?
I think it's not, it depends on what your goal is, but I think like for our project, it was also okay to have not this big agreement, because it also showed us some aspects where there are different opinions and where the different perspectives. So it can give an insight on maybe categories or ways of thinking you haven't kept in mind before, because for our project it was like that we saw, okay, it's really difficult to find this border between graph theory as a subdomain of mathematics and general mathematics terminology, to have like some terminographic or also lexicographic insights and where to draw this border and how experts give on that. And there, so I think it's if you do a qualitative analysis afterwards, it's, I won't say it doesn't matter, but it's not that important that you have 100% agreement, but it can give you some useful insight. And if you categorize it afterwards, as you also saw in our talk, you can really fast get to a higher agreement if you have this categorization. So that might be really useful.
So the actual goal or the benefit is feedback, not so much that you want to achieve agreement, but to get feedback so you can see where you are basically with the data.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I would agree on that.
Yeah. Okay, thanks. So we'll continue. We don't have much time, you know, it's 41. I would like to ask Maho about, so what I found interesting in your procedure is that it includes machine translation, right? So are you here?
Yes, we
are
here.
Yeah, okay, right. That's one thing. So, you know, the thing is that something that was not in play like 5 years, 10 years ago. So you wouldn't think about, you know, translating with machines and give the result to as a part of a data set. Now that is possible. That's one thing. If you can just reflect on, you know, was there some testing, decision making involved? So is it good enough, not good enough? And the other thing is the same thing goes with one resource that you use, which is WordNet, right? I mean, the beautiful aspect of this resource is that it's open, but I have always found that there are quite some issues with quality there. So does it reflect reality, in fact? So can you just quickly comment on these two?
Matthew, do you want me to answer? Okay, she's not talking, but I can answer. So
yes,
I'm Alberto.
Of course.
I'm another author of the same paper. So regarding the first question about machine translation, we performed machine translation for the lexical resources, and we have another paper waiting for publication on that aspect. Our main problem was the lack of context. Because our lexical resources doesn't have any kind of context of that word, and so sometimes we have very good translations, some other times we have other senses that are not the ones we have. Nevertheless, that was an approach to help the human resources to evaluate the proposals and select which are the correct one, and also correct some minor mistakes on the translation quality. So we have on that other paper an analysis for the different types of errors we found and the issues on that. Regarding the question on WordNet quality, it depends a lot on the language we are talking about. For instance, the English WordNet, it's known to be very, very good because done manually. But for instance, for Portuguese, we don't have quality WordNet that is aligned with the original WordNet. So we have good WordNet resources, but they are not exactly aligned with terms of the Princeton WordNet, and that doesn't allow us to automatically translate the words. But for other languages, for instance, for Galician, we also dealt with that. We have good quality. Also, it is not a good recall on the top of the original WordNet. So it's about 40% of the original WordNet. Hope that answers such questions. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Thank you. Moving to Anna. I would like to ask one thing. So if you think about users, who are now the users of dictionaries? So recently I came across some piece of news that that big companies hire translation companies to translate for machines. So the result of a human translation is not meant for, let's say, human consumption, but for machines. So if you think about this graph that you put in your paper with nice 4 slots, 2 of them red, 2 of them green. And if we just focus on fast learners with eLex literacy, so how much does that change the, the landscape in general? So when people become digitally literate, it has consequences for dictionaries. Anna?
The mic, Anna, the mic.
Yeah.
Yes, sorry about that, as usual, muted. So yeah, I think, we need to think who the users of the eLexicography are. So I don't think you need too much post-editing if your end user is an expert user who can live with the uncertainty and with the slips and who can do some interpretation on the fly of the data. So you can get a lot more out of lexicography with the less post-editing, because you have this problem of time, cost, and quality, which one affects the other. It's that what's called in project management the triple constraint or the iron triangle. So you can't post-edit everything, maybe, because it's very costly, but you need to know who your user is. And you can, if your user is an expert, you don't need so much post-editing because your expert can interpret and can understand where the problems of automatic eLexicography are, or even of materials that haven't been updated, published materials that haven't been updated. But for lay users, post-editing, I think is very important in terms of, and you need to invest time and money there, because lay users often get the wrong end of the stick. And with dictionaries, we have an important role to play in society, because many people use dictionaries as the definitive answer to language disputes. And if we're not post-editing them properly, then the definitive answer can be very dodgy. So I hope I've answered your question.
Yeah, sure. Like, to summarize, not all data is for everybody, right?
I think we need to think of, like you have in machine translation, you have different levels of post-editing, and less post-editing, more literacy is needed. More post-editing is more for the lay people. Yeah.
Thanks. Miloš, I have one simple question for you, maybe a bit far from the actual paper, but is Git the next environment for managing dictionary projects?
It's the current, not the...
It's the current, so it's not a question anymore, yeah?
But it's nothing, I don't think it's anything that lexicographers should be bothered with. In a way, perhaps 20, 30, 40 years ago, I'm sure that people, producing dictionaries were bothered by facts that, if all the cards would be on fire, they would be troubled, and they were, either having some heavy, fire extinguishing measures, or they made copies. And then when there were computers, people were making backups on, disks, floppy disks, and later perhaps CDs or something like that. And this is just yet another way of, managing and archiving data, with some benefits of, seeing when new data was added and so on and so on. But I don't think that we should bother people by that generally way too much. So that should be something that the tools that the lexicographers use make automatically for them. Yeah,
but if you are a manager of a dictionary project, that was my question. Then you need to also
well, when you use
think
GitHub,
about these things.
Yeah, use Git.
Yeah. You use Git. Okay. So it's 52, and we have the last one, Dorielle. If you put together like 15, 20 languages, then you are bound to have problems with common stuff, let's say, like parts of speech, senses. So when you worked on your data, so would it, did you want to choose something like universal text set that is used by many projects around the world, mainly NLP, but anyway, or is it too crude and not good enough for you? And the other thing is, like, if on a sense level you are putting together 2, 3, 4, 5 languages, you are bound to end up with a universal repository of senses, let's say, which is another WordNet. So can you comment on that?
Sure. One of my colleagues might be able to expand on that, but I'll just add a short comment beforehand, and they might jump in if they want. So for the first question regarding part of speech categories, so we have our own set of part of speech categories, which pretty much adheres to both the OntoLex standard as well as universal dependencies. It's pretty general, and we've been using it universally across our sets and global. And so the idea was that when we were normalizing each set, we would take the part of speech that already existed for that particular sense in the password dictionary, unless there was some kind of discrepancy, in which case an editor would revise that and give their own input. And so I think the result pretty much adheres to universal standard. Of course, there might be room for improvement, but an editor did go through these categories and give their input when there was room for ambiguity. So that's about that. And about the second question with the sense. So yes, because we've been using English as a pivot language, the sense information in the multigloss was English-based. And so that was convenient when we were trying to disambiguate and align the senses with the global. But of course, that there is an element of being English-centric in these multiglosses. An editor was able to determine whether or not a sense did not belong to this newfound source language, or it just did not represent the variant in a sufficient way. We also edited the headwords to reflect the source language. But yes, the sense level right now is that English-centric. So maybe Raya or Vova would like to jump in on that and add something. Maybe not.
Let's see.
I can just add, hi everyone. I can just add that it's not necessarily all English senses from password were matched with the sense in L1. So if a certain sense doesn't have an equivalent really in that language, it was okay to be removed and not to be represented in that language. And this was part of the manual editing process that the editors worked on. They would remove everything that would not be applicable to the certain language they work on. But of course, as Dorielle said, it's still because the pivot language is English, it's still very much connected to what is existent in English. And so they couldn't add anything, but they could dismiss a lot of things if they were not relevant.
Just one small thing. Did you try in any way to see if there is some match between English WordNet and what you are creating? So the synsets, or it's just individual? No, okay, I see. Right, we have like 3 minutes now. And I have to ask, Istok is helping me. Are there any questions in chat that people would like to ask our presenters?
Some questions have been asked and answered. Some discussions are very, so the Git discussion is continuing with different opinions. And I think if I go back a bit, there was a question of what exactly is post-editing lexicography. It was more of a discussion. So, you know, what I think Michal commented first that he has a different view of what post-editing lexicography is. So maybe Michal, can you just elaborate?
Yes, fine. No, it's just a minor kind of a terminological point. When Anna was talking about post-editing and mentioned that she thinks that when you go in and edit a previously published dictionary in order to update it or whatever, that counts as post-editing also. That's kind of stretching the concept of post-editing for me, because to my mind, post-editing is when you take the output of some automated, you know, process like corpus extracted something or machine translation, and then you kind of post-edit that, right? When you edit something that's been edited before, I wouldn't say that's post-editing. That's just kind of editing. But then again, it doesn't really matter. It's just a terminological kind of, yeah, so it's not even a question. I just wanted to say that I find it surprising that somebody is stretching the concept of post-editing so much.
Anna, would you like to comment?
Yes, yeah, I agree with you. It is stretching the concept, but if you look at it from the perspective that you can use eLexicography to help create new editions, I think it fits. For example, you can use eLexicography with monitor corpora to detect automatically new words and new senses that you need to incorporate in dictionary. You can use, there are lots of things that you can do in eLexicography to help post-edit already published materials. So I would like to open this concept of post-editing and not to limit it to just, post-editing what you extract in the first place, but you can also use eLexicography to improve what has already been published. And yeah, I think
of course it is post-editing in the literal sense. It's like editing after something. So yeah. Of course, yes.
But thanks for your comment. I realize this is a new, and that's why I say it's a broad view.
I think Ilan has his hand raised.
All right.
Yeah, thanks, Istok. I would just add, if I may, that any post-editing is editing. It's all editing. Just like eLexicography, it's lexicography. Those E and post, I think, have been redundant for many years. And by the way, Simon, a comment on what you were saying about translation for machines by humans. What we have found out recently is that machine translation systems are weary of using machine translation because it might be sort of using things that were done by machine translation. And there might be also legal issues about that. So there seem to be companies today who are working for the big machine translation systems and doing the translations for them, making sure it's done by humans. Thanks a lot. Very interesting discussion.
Yeah, well, that was my point. I mean, it was human translations, which the only important aspect of it, that it's human. They are sure that it's human. It's not done by machines already. Okay, so it's on my computer, it's 1 minute past 1. So the session expired, let's say, but just let me give an opportunity to urgent questions or opinions. Istok, anybody is in chat anywhere else?
No, I think, I mean, it's a very there's a very interesting discussion on this Git, which I will probably move to LexMeet because I want to see it continue, but no, at the moment we don't have any other.
Okay, so let's wrap it up. Thanks everybody for being here. 87 participants, I see. See you tomorrow morning.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Bye.